Hello and welcome everyone tonight to the October 2018 Integration Down Under. I've just got a couple of slides to start with, and then we'll turn it over to Wagner to start his talk. So again, just to remind you of the organizers that we have Martin, Dan, Renee, Wagner, and myself in the different cities. A little bit of news, they have announced the Ignite tour, and it's going to be in Sydney for this part of the world, and it's going to be the 13th and 14th of February 2019. So yeah, if you're interested, you can just search for Ignite Tour Sydney and you'll find it in Google. The registration's not open yet or anything like that, but just watch that. So tonight we have Wagner talking about disaster recovery for API management. And so let me just hand over the presentation to Wagner and let him get started.
All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, you've got control.
All right. So should be, let's start.
Okay.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us on another Integration Down Under. And tonight I'm going to be do a little bit of show and tell of some work that I'm doing for a client around setting up disaster recovery for API management. So my name is Wagner Silveira. I'm the Principal Integration Architect at Theta. I'm also a Microsoft MVP and MC on the cloud platform. I'm one of the Auckland Connected Systems user groups, core organizers, and also the Integration Down Under. And you can see my details down here, the Twitter, my email, and my blog if you guys need to get in touch with me. So let's get on with the show. What I have in the agenda today is I'm going to show a scenario that I've been working with a client, right? And we're going to be focusing on the integration, the disaster recovery piece for API management. To do that, we're going to talk a little bit about API management tiers and then why we needed to do things the way that we're doing. We're going to talk about setting up DR using the standard tier, automatic backup and restore of API management. That is one of the components that we're going to be using. Configuring the traffic manager to make sure that we distribute the traffic to either the primary or the secondary API management, and some gotchas that I found throughout the way. So the scenario that we have is something like that, right? We have basically an API management fronting Azure functions that is working together with the service bus and containers to drop messages on SQL. And we have the logic apps to do some notification in case something goes wrong with a service bus. On top of that, we have the application insights working and showing like telemetry and things like that. But the bits that we're going to concentrate is this, right? What we're going to do is we're going to have API management that is, sorry, a traffic manager that is fronting two different API management instances. And we're going to have a logic apps that is dealing with the backup and restore in cases that we have any problems. Okay. So why do we need to do this if everything could come kind of out of the box from API Management Premium? As you can see, most probably the only way to do that, if you wanted to do multi-region deployment out of the box, you would have to go with the premium instance, right? But if you look at the price difference, we can see why some people would be reluctant to be using the premium instance for that, right? In order to get this working on premium, you would have to have two nodes, one on each one of the regions, paying around almost 3K a month. That's in US dollars, right? If you push that to New Zealand or Australian dollars, we're talking about a lot of money. So instead of that, we went down to the standard mode, and that means that we have to set up a lot of our things manually. So what we need to do to set up the DR using the standard tier. The first bit is we need to define some kind of backup and restore procedures, because we want to make sure that we're synchronizing the API definitions and synchronizing the API keys, right? Actually, we're synchronizing everything that we have between that API management. But if you do that properly, that means that the client doesn't need to change keys, doesn't need to do anything like that when a failover occurs. And on top of that, we need to set up Traffic Manager for routing. So we're going to be using routed traffic based on priority. That means that they're actually not going to be distributing the load. It's just going to go to the secondary node if the primary node has failed. And to do that, you're going to need a custom domain. You're going to find out why soon enough, right? To automate the backup and restore process, what we can do is we can use the Azure Management APIs. That's going to be requiring a service principal, right, with some authentication token, and I find a way to implement all of that using logic apps. And that's exactly the first thing that we're going to look in on. And I'm going to be showing you guys now that logic apps implementation. We can trigger that, but it takes like about 15 minutes to run. So we might think about it, if you want to do that demo or not. And we can talk about recurrence, and we can talk about some notes on retention. So let me go down to good old Azure, and I can show you that generic API management backup and restore. So the process is quite simple, right? When I receive a request, and I need to pass a set of I need to pass a set of parameters here, like the access key for a container, the API instance that I want to backup or restore, the application ID and the client secret for the service principal, what is the name of the backup that I either want to restore or to take it off, where I'm going to be storing that, what is the container name, if I want to do a backup or if I do a restore, an operation, right? And from what is the resource group that I'm going to be either backing up or restoring, plus the storage account, subscription, tenant IDs. Okay, we can see that a little bit later on the call using Postman. So the first thing we need to do, we're going to create the authentication body, right, to do a call to the require the authentication token. So basically saying that the client ID is the application ID that you have in that we pass in as parameter, the client secret associated to that, the type of grant that you're doing, that is a client credentials, and the resource, that is the management API, management.azure.com. Then we do a post to loginmicrosoft.com on our tenant ID OAuth2 token, passing that information with an application, a form-based authentication, right? Once we get the output of that is going to be a token that we can use to invoke the actual management API. So we're going to create a better token, basically doing this. So creating an authentication header with better and the access token that we received back from the previous one. Then finally, we're doing a call to management to the management API on that subscription, on that resource group for the Microsoft API management service on the API management instance that we wanted to do, and saying what the operation that we're going to use, either a backup or restore. Right? Passing the content type, passing a list of information, the access key for the container, the backup name, the container where we're storing the backup or taking it off, and the storage account. And also, we're passing a raw authentication, right, for the better with that better token that we created. Okay, so with that, we can do either a backup or restore using logic apps. And the call looks like this. We're doing a call to the logic apps, a normal call to the logic apps, passing that set of information. Okay, I'm not going to be running that one right now because it takes about 15 minutes, and because me using the credits that I have, I only use in a development instance. When using the development instance, anything, or the developer instance, sorry, every time that you do a backup or restore, it actually shuts down the service. So it doesn't let you allow you to do anything while it's doing a backup or restore. On the other ones, because you have SLA, then the service continues to run while you're doing the backup or restore. But since I have to do other demos later on, then it's better to not to mess that up with that too much. But I can show you, though there is nothing much special, that I did one a minute ago, just before the run. And we adapt with a backup, a blob backup on the storage. You can use that value to do a restore and push back all the information that you had before. Okay, so the way that that thing that the logic app is working right now, everything is manual, right? So I have to manually run and execute this. But there's nothing stopping me to do something like that, to just add a new logic app. And create a overnight backup. And do something as simple as, when it starts, on a schedule, like everyone day at 0:00, right? Simply call my logic app with my parameters. And that's it, right? So now I have like a recurrent thing going every night that do the backup for me at midnight or whatever time that I want, and is doing the backup ready for me to use. Those backups are only valid for 30 days, right? So if you're doing anything, if you're extending that to actually get like the last 7 days of backup or the last 30 days of backup, then you can set up on your storage account a rule to say that after 30 days, you can remove it automatically for your storage, because it's not going to be valid anyway. If you have something that is more than 30 days, API management is not going to allow you to restore. So that means that you have to keep creating backups regularly. So you could do like one of those. If you think that your API management is really stable, there is nothing that you need to change there. You could do like one at every 30 days. But I would suggest that you do like at least once a day to guarantee that you get like changes on the API keys and all that kind of stuff from your clients. Okay. So this is basically the first part, working with the API management. Sorry, the backup and restore. Let me close this and disable just in case. Let's go back. So once you have the backup and restore, and guarantee that you can actually synchronize your main and your DR API management, then the next thing is you need to put traffic management in front of that in order to be able to see which one of those are the to be able to move from the main to the DR when something happens. And what we need to do is 3 things. Basically, we need to set up the traffic manager to point to each one of the API managements, right? After that, you need to find a way to probe if the API management is alive. And then you have to set up custom domains in front of the traffic manager and also at the API management layer, right? This is the bit that tricked me in the very beginning. Okay, so to set up the traffic manager, basically going to be creating that on priority mode, right? The traffic manager gives you like a whole lot of different ways to set up an endpoint. You can do like priority, you can do a weight, a balance, you can do geolocation, so performance. But for that one, because you wanted kind of a failover, we say it always go into the main, but when the main is not working, it goes to the next one in line, right? And we need to use an external endpoint. Usually when you're setting up Traffic Manager, it has a lot of easy ways to configure when you're talking about Azure services, but API management is not one of those, right? I think it's exactly because of this problem with the custom domain that we're going to discuss soon. In order to do the probing, what I coming up with was basically I created a dedicated API that has only one get method that always returns 200, right? And it's only running on HTTP because then I just wanted to be like fast and not use too much resources. In order to guarantee that other people is not using that, I put that on a dedicated product and only generated a key, or don't use a key, but then don't display that product to other people. And one good thing about making this probing is that you can actually test your DR without having to take your API management offline, which I don't think you can, or waiting for a region to fail, right? You can simply go and instead of returning $200, all of a sudden it's starting to return 500. and you have a doing that, you have a way to make this to work. So let's take a look at the traffic manager setup, take a look at the APIM probing, and then we do a quick call on the API management and see what is going to happen with that at this stage. So to set up the API management, right, what you need to do is basically, I need to add an endpoint. And the type, as I said, you can have like an Azure endpoint, you can have an external endpoint. When using Azure endpoint, you can have access to app services. App services is lots of public IP addresses or cloud service. But in our case, what we need to do is create an external endpoint. And the reason for that is because of the, I think API management is not on that list, right? So you can say that one is going to be API management W Silveira, and that is for W Silveira and Z dot. Of course, I'm not going to remember that from the top of my head. Let me cheat a little bit. Come here. Okay. Get this guy. Get a copy of that. And I'm going to remove that one and create it again because that's where it is, right? So just you can see that I'm not cheating. So add an endpoint, external endpoint, and W Silveira and Z API, and edit. What do you mean the? Of course you're going to be doing that, right? Just a minute. I think it's that. I know what is the problem is. Yeah. Sorry, my bad. Third time lucky. I need to put just the fully qualified domain name, not the actual endpoint, right? So I was putting the HTTPS, and because of that was crashing. Thank you, demo gods. So you see that it found it straight away with online because I already had configured that before. Okay, so that is basically what you need to do to create the endpoint. From a configuration point of view, for the traffic manager, I'm saying that the place where you're probing is on that path on port 80 for HTTP for each one of those domains. So It goes to a domain, do a get on wsilveiranz.api.net/probe/check and see if it returns okay, and do that for mbidr.api.net/probe/check and see if it's okay. If any one of those return anything different from 200, then after 20 seconds, it's going to fail, right? So we can make wsilveiranz now fail if you want to. Let's see how we can do that. So we have the probe here with a get operation. And the only thing that this that API is doing is returning 200 all the time. But if all of a sudden I return to 500, that means that in theory that API management is down. And if you wait for a little bit, that one should come as degraded. Let me disable this one, then enable again because it's going to force it to come. Because that is a time to leave on the DNS, and I want to get that a little bit faster. See? So now it's coming as degraded, which means that if I call the APIs through the traffic management, it should be going to the DR, right? Let's try that. So you can see here that actually calling that on API node to self text /tr test because I already have the custom domain set up. But trust me, that one is going to, and I can prove to you that it's coming through the secondary API management. So let's prove to you guys that that's coming through the secondary API management. That is this one. If I go to DR test, and again that one, I'm not going to sending it anywhere. I just creating like a inside API management because it's just for testing. And Wagner is not cheating. This is DR. So if we call that again, yes, I'm not cheating. This is still from DR. Okay. So this is basically how I set up the API management probe and how I created the traffic management. The last piece of the puzzle for that is the custom domain. So API management has a quite interesting restriction that is kind of a gotcha for me. It only accepts calls if it's that are destined to one of the registered domains, right? What that means, I need to have the domain in my list of proxies. If I don't have that, then the API management kind of throw a tantrum. And it throw a tantrum saying that it's returning 503. Service is unavailable. So the solution to work with that is First, the traffic manager needs to have like a CNAME set up on your DNS, right? So to create like a custom domain, like on my one, the api.node2self.tag. But at the same time, that domain also needs to be set up into API management. And you can set up the same domain on each one of the nodes. That is not a problem, right? So you can have api.node2self.tag on the primary and the secondary, and it would accept that. In order to set up a custom domain for that, you're going to need a valid certificate. You're going to need the right domain name associated to that certificate, right? And you can implement that via PowerShell script. The script looks like this. You're going to be passing a whole set of parameters. You're going to pass in what is the resource group name, where your API management instance is stored, the subscription ID, the API management service name, the proxy host name, like the name that you wanted for the custom domain. What is the certificate? Where is the certificate associated to that in your local machine? What is the password associated to that? Because that is like a server certificate, right? So it has a private key. So it's usually like a PFX certificate. And what is thumbprint associated to that? Then, first thing you do, just to guarantee, you move your your location to the right subscription. Remember that by the time that you're doing that, you should already be logged into Azure. Then you're going to upload the certificate, right? You're going to define the proxy host name configuration, saying this proxy host name has this name and there's this proxy is using that certificate. And after that, you're going to set up the API management set of host names. Notice one thing interesting here is that I pass in the service name, the resource group, I pass in the portal host name configuration, but in this case it's empty because I'm not creating anything new for the developer portal. And the things that I actually creating is this proxy host name, right? So I'm creating a new custom domain to my proxy. So let's take a look to a couple of things here. First, what happened when you don't have the API management with the proxy setup? Then after that, we can take a look at how execute that service and see how it works, or that script and see how it works. So for that, the first thing I'm going to do is I'll go back to my W Silveira. I'll show you where we find those custom domains. And you find it from here, right? So here is the only proxy that I have on this one is wsilveira.api.net, right? If I go to the DR side, I actually have two custom domains. I have the default, the one that came with that, and I also have API node2self.tag. So, excuse me. That's why when I was on the DR mode, I could use api.node2self.tag and navigate to that. Let's see what happens if I try to do the same thing on the primary. I'm going back to the API. Go back to the probe. Going to reset my policy to say, yes, I'm alive. I'll force it to find that guy online again. So came back online, right? And then now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to do the same call. If everything is working the way that I expect, I should be receiving a 503 now. There we go. This service is unavailable, right? And that took me like a good day to understand why that was not working. And that is all about this custom domain. So first thing I did was to set up on my own DNS and API management. Let me show you. We have time, so let me show you that. That was not on the script, but should be fine. You all close your eyes. Don't see my keys. Come on, go, Daddy. So if go to DNS on node to self, the first thing that you're going to find is this, right? The api.node2self.co is pointing to MBI APIM traffic manager.net. So with that, now I have my custom domain pointing to the traffic manager. But what the traffic manager does is just redirects the call to whoever is the service. So it's not like it receives that and do another call. It do like a DNS redirection or something to that sort. That's why in the end, when the call comes down to the W Silveira service, it's still coming like it was a call initiated to no api.node2self.tech. Since that one is not one of the registered domains, then what happens is say, sorry, that's not a service that I'm able to provide, right? So again, if the demo gods are with us, here is like a simpler version of that one where I just have all the API management, keys and subscriptions here. So if we run that, first thing it's going to do is asking me to log in. Now it's going to be jumping up and down, doing the login dance. I never understood why it does so much, right? But you can see that I'm not on the subscription that comes by default is not my local subscription. And of course, the things is not working with me today. Let me just double check that subscription is the correct one. run just that. Okay, it's connect to the Azure MVP. So let me do that at the step by step. Now that I'm logged in, I don't need that anymore. And just one more thing before I go. Aha. Let's see if it's going to work now. My certificate expired, sorry. DemoGods is not with me today, but basically you should be able to run with that as long as your wildcard certificate is the latest one. So that one is old, and because of that, it doesn't allow me to go further, right? If everything went to plan, then what should happen is that my custom domain would be updated here. But since my certificate has expired, it's not going to complete. So since we have a little bit of time, let me at least start that process for the DR or the backup of the API management, so you guys see that that script is running okay. So that's being started. So it's running here. That failure here was that probably that running when I first save, and is doing a call to my subscription, my resource group, common resources as the resource, API management service, backup with the right API version, right? And saying store that on that container with that name on that storage account that has an access key X. And you pass an authentication of type raw, and it's not showing here, but that's where you have in the bearer token. So if you look at the previous run, it takes a good 10 minutes to execute. And at the end, it just says here that like everything worked fine. Okay. So that's pretty much what I have for today. This process of automating the API management, backup and restore, I wrote a blog about that. And the issues with Traffic Manager when it returns 403, I also wrote a blog post. So you should have like enough information of those ones. And the script, a copy of the script is there, as well as that logic app is in a GitHub, so you can actually deploy on your own subscription if you need to. So that's all, folks. And Bill, there is any questions?
Yep.
The line?
Just a comment. Mark passed along that he said thank very much, but he had to go, so that's good.
Okay.
I've got one question. I know there's some issues at the moment with completely automating the CI/CD deployments for API management, but I know they are working on getting that working. Would that make it possible to just, instead of doing a backup and a restore, just to deploy to the two different regions?
Well, you can deploy to different regions, but the reason why I'm doing the backup and restore is because I wanted to copy the API keys. So the latest versions, if someone came and like changed the key,
Yep.
right? So the wrote their key or something like that. I wanted that key to go to the other side. Otherwise, what is going to happen is we do the restore. People would have to come to the portal, change their keys to the user again, because the keys are different between those two. When you're doing
Yep.
the backup and restore was the first thing that I tried, right? You see that it's I was not changing keys between those two.
Yep. Okay.
Right, so that was the main reason why I use it backup and restore.
Yep. So.
And talking about the CI/CD for that, Matthias has a really good project on GitHub as well, similar to that for the Logic apps, to extract the whole set of API management information and generate an ARM template for that, which is worth looking at.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I do know they're working on some more stuff for around the to automate better the deployment from like the CI/CD perspective of it.
Yeah,
so.
to guarantee that it includes the policies and everything goes together.
Yep. So the other thing I noticed, that if you go out and look on the user voice requests, there's a very large community that says we need to have the region highly available stuff, basically on the lower
On everything.
versions of.
Yes, on the other versions. I agree. There is a couple of things that I think we need there. One is the ability to do multi-region, at least on the standard, right? Yep. But also VNet integration, because I think I understand if you don't put that on basic, because basic is like your minimum, bare minimum for production, right? But standard should be like your startup kind of thing. It should give you the VNet integration and should give you the redundancy.
Yeah, the other big request for standard edition has been the VPN capabilities, like developer and premium.
The whole VNet integration, right? Like get into a VNet, from that go through the VPN gateway into on-prem and all of this. Because a lot of the stuff that we're trying to do, like what I discussed in offline with you guys around using Azure relays to get into on-premise resources through API management and things like that, is because we don't have VNet integration.
Yep. Okay, do we have any other questions? Okay, I don't have any other questions there, so we will end it there. And for those people that happen to miss it, I will have the recording up shortly on this on our YouTube site.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for joining.
And good night, everyone.